Cool. All right, I'm going to declare it. We're live with, this has been a long time coming.
Yeah.
This, we're joined today by somebody who first honored us on his podcast, Sauna Talk, many moons ago during COVID times. It was a video podcast just when that was kind of picking up. We vowed that we would bring you here to do this, and it's finally happening. So, we're honored today to have the amazing Glenn Auerbach from SaunaTimes and the Sauna Talk podcast with us on our podcast today. So, firstly, thank you so much for coming all this way from Minneapolis, where you're based. You've come all this way for this podcast, right? No other reason whatsoever.
No, none at all. No. Well, I'm all smiles because I want to thank you guys for getting me up here. It's a big commitment you've made, and I want to honor that by being here. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Yeah. But we should also add, you came across also for the UK Sauna Summit, and then you've got a bit of a tour ahead of you across Europe. So before we dive into that, Glenn, let's for anybody who doesn't know you, which if you're in this space and you don't know Glenn, then you've got
been living under a rock.
Yeah, you've got a lot of research. You got a lot of research to catch up on.
Yeah.
So with fanboy gushing over, Glenn, give us a bit of an overview of who you are, how you came into the sweat bathing and sauna space, and what kind of brought you to doing what you do today here in this space.
Yeah, no, thanks. Well, I came to sauna, like many Americans actually, by traveling in the Nordic region. And, when you experience sauna up there, sometimes people, stick to it, and then others will be like, oh, that was fun, and let's go to Germany and go to the Hofbrauhaus, But for me, I was a young college student. I was living in London at the time, and it was a time when, I was young and living in a very, small, inexpensive flat in Shepherd's Bush, and it was a cold winter and rainy, and I'm like, oh man, just freezing all the time. And then I was juxtaposed to this. I wanted to get to Scandinavia in the north because I love nature and the lakes and stuff. So I made a commitment with an American friend of mine that we would do that, and he went to Ireland, and we said, okay, it'll be June 1st. Copenhagen train station, 12 noon, under the information dot, the I. Every train station's got the I. And there was no internet, there was no phone, there was no nothing. And so he went up to Ireland. It was January, February, March, and I'm in London. And now it's like mid-May. And it's like, is John going to be there? Well, I'm going. And so, I took off, and there I was on June 1st, Copenhagen train station, 12 noon, looking around, and there's John, So he came from Ireland, and there we were, and so we hitchhiked with our backpacks up, through Denmark into Sweden, and we found ourselves on the archipelago, and we ran into two guys, one guy on the train, and he was looking at us very, suspiciously, but he heard us speaking American English, and he, oh, you're American, da, da, da. Turns out he did construction. He was a Swedish guy who did construction in Manhattan, and really took a liking to John and I, like these poor wet dogs with our backpacks soaked, our hair wet, and it was a rainy time. And he says, well, I'm going out to work on my friend's cabin on an island. And so we followed him, and they were speaking in Swedish. We arrived, and we followed him and with our backpacks to this house that was, had scaffolding on this island, and they're speaking in Swedish. And he was ambassadoring us to be casual laborers. And so we did that all summer. And it was probably summer of 85, maybe, just to date this. But the most memorable part of that summer was every night the four of us would hop in Gunnar's boat, and we would go over to his other uncle's island, fire up the wood-burning sauna, pull in perch and flounder in nets from the sea, and boiled potatoes, vodka, till like 4 a.m. And the sun was still on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this is life.
Magical.
Just the nature, sauna intertwined with that, and just so clean and sleep so well, I said, this will always be a part of my life. So long story, but that's how I initially got into this.
Yeah. So you go back to the States and then I guess there's some kind of hiatus. So, talk us through a little bit of how you get from there to the idea behind SaunaTimes and how that all kicks off.
Yeah, right. So I bought an island in northern Minnesota. I moved to Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes. For those not familiar with the United States, right in the center of the country is this wonderful geographical setup where you have a ton of lakes in the state of Minnesota. In the north, especially, is the lake region equivalent. And I just was really taken to that topography. It reminded me so much of what I love, the granite outcroppings in the archipelago, vibe and stuff. And so, so I bought an island there in 1989 with the full intent of building a sauna, and I bought a sauna stove, put it in the old cabin that was there, and then I married my wife, and we never ended up building that first sauna on that little island because it was too small when we had our first child. So that was kind of in the back of my mind, and then we bought land on a big island. That's the first thing we did.
Nice.
And you're very Finnish to do that. So that was 1995 when I built my first sauna with John, the American friend of mine.
Yeah,
and that was a reunited of things. So and then I started building saunas for others, and I chronologued a seminal sauna build that I did in 2013 on the shores of Lake Superior in northern Minnesota. And I did that mainly because I knew it wasn't going to be my last build, and I just wanted to have like a really clear plan just to be organized about it. And then it turned out to be the foundation for my book on how to build a sauna.
Yes. Yeah. So you released the book and then you promote this through the website as well.
Yeah, the website was founded in 2008. I remember that.
Okay.
And that was just another one of these things. Like so many of the things in life for anybody is like you just do it and then backfill later. And the idea of the website was there was so many cool aspects to sauna, as we know, the three of us know, and I just felt a real urge to get them down on paper and to do it digitally through, I didn't know what the word blog was. I still don't particularly like that word blog, but just a chronologue, I guess you could say, or just a thought dump spot with no intention of any sort of SEO. And I still don't SEO it. I know what the word means, but I don't particularly respond well to the word. It seems too conniving. You know?
And I think that's it. But generally speaking, people will say actually that Google likes original thought, and Google actually likes that you're just doing you. So I kind of think that's a good way to think about it. So.
Would you say in the early days, it's fair to say that it was like an open diary?
Good point. Yeah, that's a good word for that.
At what point
diary? Yeah.
What point did you find that like people were becoming so interested in speaking with you that it became, now it stands as an amazing resource that you have this vehicle for collaboration with other creatives in the space, and now you speak with people on your podcast, etc. So was there a transition, a movement between going from documenting your own thoughts and ideas to then working with other people?
Again, I would have to say that's an organic transition because I really believe in the inclusion, and it's a little bit of a judo move in the sense that I like content, and when people have something really interesting, I mirror it back to them, and I say, well, that would make for a great article on the website. Yeah. And I really value inclusion because there was a little bit of a brand refresh that happened, and I didn't like it. It was SaunaTimes with Glenn, and I don't know if anyone notices, but I've gone back to the original uniform of SaunaTimes as your guide to a healthy escape, because it isn't me, it's sauna, and it's about others, not me.
Yeah. Oh, that's really, really fascinating. I think. I've been lucky enough to be on that podcast and be interviewed a few times, and that's certainly the vibe I get. It's it's very curious and very like innocent kind of look into lots of different people's worldview in this space, and certainly no judgment, for people who have differing levels of experience. And it's really, really refreshing to see.
Thank you. It means a lot, because it's a lot of work to do that. It's a big commitment, but I do it for love, right? And I never had dollar signs or have dollar signs attached to it. And I think I'm hoping it's more pure because of that.
Yeah.
So was there a time in recent history where you were like, okay, there's so many great conversations. You're a fantastic orator. So whenever you're discussing a topic, it's hard not to be really drawn in because it's infectious the way speaking with you.
Thank you.
A number of times you go, this would make a great article on the website.
A lot.
At what point do you go, actually, sod this, I'm just going to record this conversation? So when was the genesis of the podcast?
Oh my gosh, I don't remember. I think 2016 maybe. Sauna Talk started as a joke, and it really, yeah, man, yeah. It's still like very lighthearted that way. Yeah. Sauna Talk is there's a post about what Sauna Talk is. It's parallel to Sauna Brain in a way. I love this Sauna Brain thing, which we can talk about. But Sauna Talk is a different kind of talk. It's this talk that we have with a family member that is very natural. And for me, Sauna Talk was with my two sons, Grant and Nate, and being able to connect with them as not just father-son, but as human to human. That's Sauna Talk. Sauna Talk can be collaborative talk with like a business associate sort of thing. And so my friend Tom Rolando and I joke about Sauna Talk, and we're like, we say, because you come up with these great ideas and concepts, almost like you're high on weed and there's some libation, and then the next day you wake up and we're like, what? Oh, that was just Sauna Talk. Too speculative,
a pipe dream, right?
Yeah, but I love that. I think we need more of that in our lives. This Sauna Talk, this ability to just free flow our thinking. Yeah, and so the idea there is let's capture some Sauna Talk on the bench, and let's hold ourselves to some of these way out concepts, goals, ideas, dreams.
I like it.
So the sauna is the canvas.
Yeah, it is. It's very opening, isn't it?
And so do you know how many what episode number we're up to now?
I love the question. So I have my eldest son is 28, and his fraternity brother, who's the same age, helps me on the back end. He's like my only quote unquote employee, but I just pay him off the side to publish these, because I used to publish them myself using GarageBand, and I learned GarageBand, the software, and I'm like, this is just insane. So Cody says, I'll do this for you. So he just emailed me the other day, and he goes, we're getting close to episode 100, so 96.
That's right.
Nice.
Yeah.
So he says, we got to do something.
You got to get somebody really good on, right?
Well, I'm up for it. I'm totally cool with how that goes. I just want to hold the reins back a little bit because I want to have the universe tell me who the 100th guest is going to be.
Why have one guest?
Yeah, have a big party.
Yeah, what about
best of
Sauna Talk Forum?
Yeah,
how many of your favorite guests can you cram into one sauna?
Like, okay, so if I have done say 94, maybe there's a few repeats, so maybe there's 88 guests.
Right. Sure.
So contact all 88.
Let's see. But I think you got to be careful. You don't want to end up in it'd be great to have a huge thing, but you could end up just with so many people that nobody could have Sauna Talk, because it's kind of like, and I guess the thing with what you're saying is like, it's kind of getting into those creative spaces and being able to riff and build out cool ideas. And if there's too many people in that space, then it might be quite difficult.
That's exactly correct. Monday, which we'll talk about, I brought my microphone and I was saying, okay, this is going to be cool, because at Sauna Days, I generally just do that very organically. I'll have my microphone and interview people, and just to give listeners a flavor of the event. And so I had that as an intention for Monday, and it never really happened. The music was too good, and the energy was just flowing. Yeah. And so there's a time and place for that. Multiple people chat, and it's usually difficult.
Yes. Actually, that's a good point. we should rewind to what happened on Monday.
Yeah. So so we all descended on to East London to Nettle 360, which is a rooftop bar that has a series of electric saunas that look out across the whole London skyline. A really beautiful scene. You've got, you can see everything from the City of London all the way through to Canary Wharf and everything in between. So that and the backdrop in beautiful May sunshine. We had a full day of listening to speakers from across the world. I think you or Mikkel probably hold the award for the furthest traveled.
I'm going to take that award because he flew from Norway. Okay. I came from Minnesota.
Yeah. So people from across the world. Actually, Miki was there from Japan, right?
Yeah.
So maybe she gets it.
Does she live in London?
Does she? Okay,
so
fine.
see how I defend my ranks?
Yeah, cool. I like it. Okay, cool. We'll give you the honorary title. So we all descend, and then we had everything from, people talking about installations. Obviously, myself and Max had talks there about sauna building, sauna construction, the sauna industry. But then there were practitioners, there were people who were medical experts, there were people like yourself and Mikkel who are more, I suppose, journalistic in this space. And really just for a first off event, just fantastic, just everything you'd want.
I couldn't agree more. I was so taken by it. And I know a little bit about the behind the curtain organization of the event. British Sauna Society. Mark was, I think, one of the backbones in organizing the day.
Yeah,
and
Mark and Mika. Pulled that together.
Mika and Wendy, I mean, just amazing crew you have in the British Sauna Society. And this is the danger of starting to list names. Because it gets
thanks to everybody
isolating.
involved.
Yeah, thanks to all involved.
Many names.
I guess that's the thing, though. Like, we do it without name or title. And it really shone. It showed me British sauna culture. And I love Britain.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Anglophile in its own right. And I love sauna. And so it was a no-brainer when I was asked to come and speak. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm in.
Yeah. So tell us, right, this is where this gets fun, and we'll come on to this in a minute. So a few weeks ago, I was at Sauna Days. That's your baby up in Lake Superior in northern Minnesota. But from the US looking at the UK, tell us about what you see happening, what's different about here, and how the culture is going. And, with the summit at the beginning of the week, what this kind of looks like it means for the industry right now.
Two things come to mind, and this is dangerous because there could be 8 things that come to mind. But if I were to distill it to 2, you guys are more developed. And this was part of your talk, Jake, when you came to Sauna Days, Larsmont Cottages, in first weekend of May. It's happening next year in 2025. And I can judge a good gathering by the number of people that say, I'm coming back next year. Because you have maybe three different reactions to an event where it's like, I already booked. I'm coming back, and then the middle one is, I'm coming back. And then the third is you hear nothing. Yeah. And it was all the first 2, and I'll take number 2. With people have full intentions of coming back. And I think that this event here, the British Sauna Society, the Sauna Summit, is like, people want in. And what was about 175? Was that head count?
It was more, wasn't it? And the wait list was the same or more again. So for every person that was there was a parallel invisible person who couldn't get in because it was just capped, and they didn't know how big it was going to be. So I remember having these conversations with Mark and Mika, and they were like, how big do we go? What kind of venue do we book? We just need to do it. And I spent a lot of time being like, guys, it's going to be a sellout, whatever, And so they were a bit more cautious, and it's
it was over.
It's like Glastonbury. You've got to be waiting to click the button to buy the ticket,
right? Yeah, and keep them wanting more, and so there is that spirit. So so that's number one, is that sauna in Britain is surely more. The sauna that we know and love, call it, is certainly more developed. That's I would say the primary observation I had. And the second one is a little bit hard. I'm going to look for each of you guys to chime in. And this has to do with, again, another thing I love about your country is there's a real social welfare to things. Like, if you want to go to a concert, right, it's like 20 quid. And then you get this whole list of where it's 10 quid. If you're a military, if you're senior, if you're unemployed, if you're a student. That exists a bit in America, but it's usually not 20 quid. It's like $50, And so anyway, I sense there, I don't know what the word for all this stuff is, but there's this overused word of community, but I really felt it on Monday.
Egalitarian.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I like that.
And particularly, I think maybe we were in a bit of an echo chamber, given the kind of attendance. Was a lot of community sauna projects and these independent sauna projects. So you've seen a window into a microcosm, but the force at the UK Sauna Summit, the real energy was around this egalitarian, cheap or free access to good sauna was something that got discussed a lot in public spaces.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Yes, that's exactly number 2. I knew Max would be able to say it better than me, but you nailed it. That's exactly my observation. Thank you. And that's, as a goal, that's if I want to put more weight on my own shoulders, I'd like to bring that spirit to the tribe in America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have some real exciting avenues in that realm, but I want to carry the torch from Britain to America based on that egalitarianism of sauna. Yeah. Thank you.
My sort of sauna days experience kind of, I picked up on that, and that was a big part of my talk as well, was trying to encourage this strong sense of openness and sharing and collaboration over competition. And that's something I'm really big on, where certainly in this space, just like in the sauna, the more people you bring into the community and the more you share, the value builds. And, in younger markets, so, like in the US, where it's sort of feels perhaps a few years behind where we feel like we are in the UK, and what we learned from the Sauna Summit, that they have in Oslo, for example, perhaps even further ahead than we are now in the UK. This sense of openness and community is actually what helps drive the growth. And the suspicion that's there is like, we can't talk to the people down the road, and there's because these guys kind of competing with us. And actually, when we were at the summit, what we found was when you spoke to a lot of people who had facilities, they were like, well, actually, I've had 7 other sauna businesses pop up in walking distance from me, and yet I'm having the best year I've ever had. And it's because, the abundance versus scarcity mindset, and the idea that actually, if you have a place where you've got 7 beautiful saunas that people can go to, then they're going to go to that place and they're going to go to 7 saunas. Whereas if you've got a place and you've got 1 sauna, then it's probably not even going to be on the map of consideration for people that might want to visit that, or it's certainly more of an ask.
We're seeing this in a very small scale. We just had an example of that in my city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, the 612 Sauna Society. 612. I helped build that sauna. I'm very proud of that sauna and that organization. They were deployed on the west side of Lake Nokomis, and then another sauna was permitted to be on the north side. And what happens there is we're as a human species, we're really sheep, by nature. We don't want to be the lone wolf, and so this created a legitimacy to the vibe of Lake Nokomis. Oh, there's sauna here. There's sauna here. Well, sounds like sauna's a thing to do, and then they sign up. Just to your point.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the 612, because that was really cool, going out there.
Right. So 612 Sauna Society, whenever I hear that word, I think of JP, John Pedersen, who has a similar background to me, who caught the sauna bug as, in his case, an exchange student studying in Finland, and, brought it back in his own brought it back for himself and wanted to do something. And he contacted me. I helped him with his first mobile build. really funky sauna, and then he had this vision to do that, and he put together a steering committee, and his whole thing was like not owned. Let's have this thing as a cooperative kind of thing. So that sauna with the original, putting a plug in for Kuma. The original Kuma is still in that sauna, and I love the heat in that sauna. It's in an ice fish house trailer. I think it's about 20 feet long, 20 feet I think is the length. But the hot room itself is 8 foot by 10 foot. And so the back benches, 7'4" internal dimension, and then there's an L there. And I like how the stove sits right over the axle. So when you open the hot room door, stove right to your left, and the bench work there. The original benches, original stove, original rocks even. We don't change the rocks out. And I love the vibe in that sauna. And I've been a longstanding board member. I think my title is Emeritus Board Member now and stuff.
Wow.
So, but yeah, man, a lot of history in that, a lot of spiritual patina in that sauna, and I love it.
And where does the name come from? 612.
That's the area code.
Mm-hmm.
And so the interesting thing about Minnesota, right? There's predominantly, there's 4 area codes, phone numbers that make up the state, but 218 is a very iconic. If you're a 218er, that means that you're a northern Minnesota person. And in 218, where our cabin is, I consider myself more of a 218er than a 612er. In 218, they say, he's a 612er. And that's people from the Twin Cities that go up north and play in the north.
Yeah.
And they're identifiable, by locals. Oh, he's a 612er. And so that was a little bit of a nod to the area code of the region.
Well, it's funny, when I was at Sauna Days, that, when I was meeting people and I was like, who are you here with? What kind of brings you here? And you're right, the number of people that would say, I'm a 612. And I was like, oh, right, okay.
You just took it.
Yeah. And fantastic to see
I
that.
think in numbers, like my kids will tell me, it's like our house in Minneapolis is 5621, and that's the address.
Yeah.
So it's like, where are you? I'm at 562. I'm at 5621. I'll meet you there in an hour.
Wow.
That's how my brain works in numbers more. So, 612 is great. I very much identify with those 3 numbers.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about Sauna Days and where that comes from. So you mentioned briefly there Larsemont Cottages, Odyssey Resorts on the northern shore of Lake Superior, between Duluth on the western side of Superior and Two Harbors. There is a series of cottages there, and they have one full-time bricks and mortar wood-burning sauna with a Kuma stove in it. And we actually did a sauna talk on the benches just as I'd flown in straight from the UK into Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul. We went straight up there and straight onto that sauna bench.
Which is a great call, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. The best way to deal with
jet lag.
With jet lag, stay awake, have a sauna in the evening, and then pass out.
It's a great equalizer. I mean, good heat knows no borders, right? So I could tell you were very comfortable grounding yourself on the bench there.
Yeah.
Throwing water, chilling out between rounds, and you're dealing with your back, and you've been sitting so long, and the expansion contraction. So it was a grounding agent for you to get on the bench. Because I was gonna, we live very close to the Minneapolis airport, so here Jake's flying in, and I'm like, okay, option A, which is a great option, is Jake stays in our mini Airbnb, which is above our garage. That is really great. Like if I were coming to town, I'd want to stay there, because it's not in our house. You got your own space, and you're literally right above the sauna. Yeah. And then there's an outdoor shower. Life is wonderful there. And so I was thinking of putting Jake up there as soon as he arrived. But I think it was within a few hours of his landing, I said, fuck it, man, we're going up north, And it was a great call, wasn't it?
Spot on. And, the roads there are super clear, obviously. You're going up to, as you pointed out, like the kind of very Finnish. So you say land of 10,000 lakes there. Finland, iconically referred to as the land of 1,000 lakes, and the vibe is very Finnish. There's a lot of genetic Finns there, and Finnish, what they call Finnish settlements and Finnish communities there, and still visibly Finnish, not just in how they look, but also how they behave, how they talk. And so this is one of those places outside of Finland that sauna has existed without without the need for a revival or a reseeding of thermal bathing.
Good point.
And so you have this, is festival, is that the right?
So, let's talk about the origin story.
Yeah.
And then I want to lay claim that it's not my show. Okay.
Okay.
The Sauna Days is not my show.
Yeah.
And I do this because I'm resistant to responsibility. So there I was, 2013. The origin of the book, on how to build a sauna was from 5 miles south of Larsmont Cottages. Now, one quick thing about Lake Superior, which I think is, first of all, it's the world's largest freshwater lake if you consider water by volume, not by square miles or what have you. So there's a larger square mile lake in Russia. But for real purposes, it is the world's largest freshwater lake. So we got that. But the North Shore is rugged. It's like the masculine shore, they say. Very rugged shoreline, rock outcroppings, not a friendly shoreline for, I don't know if that's gender specific or not, but anyway, the Wisconsin side or the other shore is sand and soft and it warms. It's a warmer, more gentle shoreline. But we like from a sauna perspective, I like that rugged shoreline. It's majestic, it's harsh, and I had an opportunity to build a sauna right on the rocks, right on the shoreline, just south of Larsmont Cottages, for a good buddy of mine, the origin of Sauna Talk, Tom Rolando. And so he's, hey, G-Man, he calls me G-Man. Hey, G-Man, I'm going to buy a place on Lake Superior. And he sends me the real estate listing, and there's a 12-foot by 16-foot shed right on the shoreline. He goes, can you build a sauna here? And I go, damn straight I can build a sauna there. And I love that sauna. And anyway, so he closed on like October 1st. And I was up there on October 1st, like within hours of the closing, meeting the Home Depot truck with all the material. And it's right on the old Highway 61, if you know Bob Dylan. That is an iconic road. And people bike that road when they bike around Lake Superior and stuff. So it's a little bit of a fisheye, so this Home Depot truck, I didn't want it to draw attention because we got no permits and stuff. So it's 10:30 a.m. and I'm hauling material down the hill as quickly as I can and getting it in the shed. And I figure that's phase one. Material. In my book, it says that arguably half the work of building your own sauna is getting the materials to your job site. And so it's like I exhaled and called Tom. Good news. We didn't get busted. All the materials on site. And now I'll start the build. And so he says to me, he goes, there's a really cool cottage up the road, and they're nice people there, and they have a wood-burning sauna. So, at the end of your workday, go introduce yourself. And so I did. So I started the building process 5 miles south, and then I would do that. I'd go up there, and I'd very quietly park my car and then go to the sauna at Larsmont Cottages. It was always lit and hot and wood burning. And I'm like, man, this is a dream. I'm building a sauna and now I get to take a sauna. So 100% of the time I sat all alone on the bench and I would decompress the work of the day. And then I'd go have a beer in the lodge and got to know the staff, and I'd have a meal there and stuff. And that's where I was like, Sauna Talk in my own head of the concept that this resort could be taken over by sauna enthusiasts one day. And I sheepishly pitched the idea of a sauna gathering at Larsmont Cottages in 2019, and Sauna Days was born.
Wow. So from that point there, that first one, how many people attended? What was it like?
About 25.
About 25.
And we thought it was a win.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it was. Because we picked the worst weekend for occupancy. That's the other thing. Like, it's dead season, right? You're coming out of winter, and they're like, first weekend in May, nothing's happening.
Yeah.
And so to have like 5 fully paid rooms when they would have not had those 5, it was a victory.
Nice.
Yeah, we had two mobile saunas then.
And this year when I was there, so what was the head count there?
I think it was about 175, close to 200, and all of the rooms on site completely booked out. 12 mobile saunas plus the brick and mortar that Jake referenced, and day passes. lodging on site, speakers.
Yeah,
you know,
range of excellent speakers.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Excluding myself.
Wow, come on, man. That was
but
great.
Mika and Wendy were there from the British Sauna Society as well, so they flew in as well, which was excellent. And then you had speakers on cold water immersion and breath work, and much like the UK Sauna Summit, you had individual practitioners and then also people in the sort of the building and creating space, right?
Yeah. And I think the difference is one of the things I do like, well, I could list a full page of things we love about sauna, but I like the edges and the idea of like breath work, cold water, like you referenced, sauna and sobriety. You know, Jen spoke and it was great. I like these things along the fringe because it reminds me of music. You know, sauna. It's like, you know, just when you get a hit song is when you want to go back to the studio and bring in a mandolin and try something different. You know.
Yeah. No, very cool. So let's also talk a little bit about something you've mentioned there a couple of times, Kuma, right? So Kuma is an interesting one for us because it's a North American sauna heater brand. And they're based not far from Lake Superior up in Tower,
right.
Minnesota. And they're a bit different. They're not like other sauna heaters in this space. Small, family-run, third generation?
Fourth
generation? Well, I guess they have... Is that the young?
That's the fifth.
That's
Leaf.
the fifth generation.
Yes, you saw him running around the rocks.
Yeah, their little boy there. So... give us, talk a bit about those. It's a brand that you have in your own sauna, for example, and that was the heater that was there at the bricks and mortar sauna at Larsemont as well.
So one of the ways I'll tee the ball up by talking about, there's a post on SaunaTimes. It's about the sauna cognition theory, and that's I claim that from something that does exist. It's called the pizza cognition theory, and that was a term coined by a New York Times journalist when he went to go review the World Pizza Championships. And what he realized, which is true, is that the pizza you love is the one that you grew up with. And I think that relates very well to sauna. And I try to be as fair as I can about my allegiance to Kuma. It's a stove that means a lot to me, and it's a family that means a lot.
Yeah,
it's a really interesting point because I was sat on a table with some Finns from the embassy and the architect Mikko from Studio Puisto at UK Sauna Summit, and we were talking about favorite saunas and things. And after I'd said, actually, one of my favorite experiences was that hunting lodge we often talk about with the iTokyoS.
Yeah, I've been there. I've been there too.
You've been there as well.
I think were we with you, or was that separate? No. Okay. It was the same trip though.
You went there with Jesse from Navi, right?
Yeah,
it's great.
I remember that sauna talk.
That after I'd finished saying that, pretty much every Finn on the table said, "Well, of course, it's the family sauna at the summer cottage."
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's right. But there is some. So that's the spirit or the heart speaking, right? But there's like, and this, Max, is right up your alley. But there's the bits and the bytes, like the functionality, and that's where Kuma, to me, it's bulletproof on many levels.
They do things differently.
It's about burning wood efficiently and keeping the heat in the firebox and then by extension in the room versus going up the chimney. And so you have this damper control in the stove itself that is like the door is tight. There's no air that gets in except the air that you let get in. Yeah. And so it's a real trick with wood burning efficiency to create this dense heat that I don't feel in any other wood burning sauna heater.
Yeah, it's certainly noticeable, isn't it? So it's a damped heater. So the analogy that I kind of drew when I was out there was that a lot of Finnish sauna heaters, they work on with the exception of heat storing sauna heaters like the iTokyoS, most constantly fueled burners in Finland and the Baltic states use the ash pan, and it's you fuel it up and you burn it, and maybe you fill that stove up 3 or 4 times before it's up to temperature, and it's a fast burn because the idea over there is that a fast burn is a clean burn, and an efficient burn. And the heat, therefore, if you're not careful, the heat can peak and trough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say it's a bit like a petrol engine. It gets hot fast. It heats up fast, but then it cools down fast. And if you're not on it with regulating the fire, then you get this kind of peak and trough, and you can often be sat there and go, oh, maybe the fire's dying down a bit, because everybody sat in there is going, it doesn't feel as hot as it was.
Yeah.
Whereas the Kuma, I kind of likened more to a diesel engine, and it's just like it's there and it just keeps going. And
bit of a thermal juggernaut.
Yeah, it's just building and building and building. And I like that analogy as well, because when I think of diesel engines, I think of like big, British Leyland lorries, Leyland trucks, or some kind of
old
big
diesel locomotives.
Yeah, or maybe, tanks and things like that. And the Kuma is, I was joking about it. I didn't realize they already marketed themselves on this, but I was like, the hatch on this thing is like a T-32 Soviet tank. It's like, I kind of picture some guy crawling out of it wearing a tanker hat, like, where are the bad guys at? So yeah, really heavily built, and I think it makes them very, very durable, very hard wearing, big thermal mass, big energy in there. But I was surprised when I see something like that. I think this is something that's going to take a lot of wood to get it hot, and actually, because of the way that it's damped, you can get the fire going, put some wood on it, and, from what I gather, right, it didn't seem like people were putting lots of wood on.
No.
Right?
I love your analogy, and yet I'll say that it gets up to highway speed as quick as a motorcycle.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Wow.
I mean, just the performance of that. It runs like a oil tanker, a diesel 18-wheeler lorry, but it gets up to highway speed fast.
Yeah.
And I love that stove, man.
So tell me, when you fire up your stove, what does that look like? How long are we talking? Give me some time.
Okay, so let's paint a picture.
So
I'm on my island that we built a cabin, 1995, 96. It's a 28-foot by 36-foot A-frame cabin. Love it. Big glass, aspen, locally milled on the inside of our cabin. Look due east, beautiful view. Now, off to the right, down some steps, is the 12-foot by 16-foot sauna guest cabin. / office, if you want, And so say it's I'm up there, right, and it's sauna time, right? So at 4:00 I'll go down. I have a small wood pile, which deserves note. My wood stack for the sauna is not huge. I harvest in the fall and start using from the right side in spring, and I'll grab four or five sticks of birch, go into the firebox, open the door, load those in, take random piece of birch bark, little handful of kindling, like I'm talking a small amount, and light that birch bark, throw the kindling on top. Upside down fire is the way I love to ignite the Kuma, and I'll have the ash pan door open, which Daryl Lampa, third generation, would get very upset about, because safety is number one. I mean, he's 100% American Finn, who's all about, safety first, So he gets pissed when I tell him I start the Kuma with the ash pan open. It's like a faux pas. But yeah, middle lever, damper up all the way, and just let that run for like 5 minutes until that kindling gets going, and then just close that down, middle lever up, stay that way. Then I'll go for an island walk, or cut the grass, or canoe a little bit with Julia. 45 minutes later, grab my water bottle, a libation of choice, and then off I go to sauna, right? And maybe a neighbor will come down the path, hey, sauna. So by 45 minutes, certainly within an hour, it's sauna time.
Yeah. And so in that time, you've not put any more wood on?
No wood. And then I'll throw another log in maybe once.
Yeah.
It depends. If I'm solo sauning, I may throw a log in at round one, because I know that's it, you know. But if another couple people are coming and there's going to be a long time between rounds, I may throw 2 logs in, and that's
wild. You were so used to, like you say, the Finnish developed continuously burning ones.
Yeah.
I can't remember the actual volume of wood they recommend per hour. But yeah, we find that you have to really control the burn, not by damping so much, because you can shut the door, and if there's a lot of heat going up the flue and there's a strong wind outside, it can still have tremendous draw. So you then move into controlling the fire by the size of the wood.
Well, by the amount of oxygen you allow into the fire chamber.
Well, yeah, but because the door isn't sealed on a lot of the Finnish heaters, and the ash pan isn't sealed,
and the ash pan is used as the air regulator as well.
Yeah, what you find is that even when that's all damped down as much as you can, when there's still a lot of heat going up the flue and the wind's strong, it's still kind of a roaring blaze.
So go ahead.
So we that's the point where we would maybe look for a larger size of log, or
I love that.
Or slower burning species of timber.
Yeah.
So you might put a big piece of oak on once it was up to temperature, and interesting as well as a use case, because in Finland they all burn a lot of softwoods because they don't have an abundance of temperate hardwoods. But in the UK, what we can do is we can get it hot using thinly split pieces of birch or spruce pine, and then once it's nice and hot, you can stick a big piece of oak on and damp it down a bit, and then it just starts to glow.
Yes,
and
that's good.
That's as close as you can get to that Kuma.
I like that. Yeah. Now, I've been learning a lot about wood burning through Daryl, and I, just a salt of the earth guy, unpretentious as hell, but spent his whole life really studying how wood burns and how to extract the most energy out of wood. He's heated with wood his whole life. Kuma has two product lines, the sauna stove and then the vapor fire, which is a home wood burning furnace, which is the premise of the whole company. Really is this maximum extraction thing. And we talk about this new product, the Blue Flame. And the Blue Flame actually came about because Daryl was pissed that I would keep the ash pan door open and go for a run around the island. That really got to him. Yeah. So he went back to the drawing board and developed the Blue Flame, which is this triple gasification system. And because he was committed to saying, I want to be able to run this thing without having to open the ash pan door. Like, we're going to get rid of that cheat, And so what he's created is, and the Blue Flame is appropriately named because he's taught me about the difference between a methane burn and a carbon burn. Like when I see a sauna stove going with that white flame, I want to damper it down. Like, that's my thing, because Blue Flame is the hottest flame, but it's not any better than white flame. But when you see blue and white, now you're getting maximum efficiency, because he's taught me about 70% of the energy in burning wood is in the gases as the gas burns, not the wood itself. So if you're getting maximum gas burning, it's through blue and white flame in conjunction.
So let's talk about that. So the white flame the blue flame is methane burning, right? And the white flame is the carbon burning. Right.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that stuff. I think that's really cool. I'm not a pyro or a wood, but I just think it's dynamite, especially as we get in. I mean, we're all into this efficiency stuff, whether it's our cars or, our refrigerators and stuff. And I just feel really good about a handful of firewood to serve many people and make them happy,
It's really good. And actually the thing that it's led me to kind of think about just now whilst you're talking about all of this is that actually the flue gas must be way cooler than we would have in a lot of...
Yeah, I'm not sure they've got any published information on the Kuma, the Kuma flue gas stuff, but it'd be really good to, I don't know, put in a good word. Let's see if we can get Garrett, who's the current operating generation of Kuma, to come and have a chat over here.
Well, you got to meet Garrett, right?
Yeah,
Did you get any one-on-one time with Garrett?
I didn't get much, but he certainly, he's quietly confident in what he's up to. But if you can get him on a roll, just like the three of us, you can see the passion and the excitement comes out when you're talking his language, and if you know what he's talking about, or you can relate to it, or ask the right kind of questions, then he's just
so exciting. Yeah. I mean, I have to say one more thing about the company, because we got other things to talk about.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, but I'll try not to get emotional, but I can easily. This company really defied odds. It really shouldn't exist today. And why I say that is because Daryl committed himself to this as a love, not as a business.
Yeah.
And he was welding. He was doing all the welding at a couple part-time welders, and his son had zero interest. I figured that lamp manufacturing would
Die
end
out then.
with Daryl. But Garrett, he studied hospitality, and he worked for the largest employer in the region, Fortune Bay Casino. He had over 200 people under him as the head of hospitality over there. He had a big job, a lot of responsibility, and did the books for lamp manufacturing at night, and it was always stayed in the family, as it is today. And then a guy named Dale came into the picture. Now, Dale emigrated. He and his wife moved from 612 from Minneapolis up to the Lake Vermilion full-time. And Dale got to meet Daryl, because there's only 600 people in the town. And the idea was that Daryl, sheepish, like a Finn, didn't want to announce it in broad terms, but was looking to sell. And Dale has great experience in hardline manufacturing, operations, marketing. He's done it all, product development stuff. And Dale is, he's 68, I think, but he acts like he's 28. He's got a shit ton of energy and drive and passion, so it was a fit. And they're both very Christian, even though they don't go to the same church in town. They have a spiritual connection that way, and they got to know each other. And Dale, instead of buying the company, really shored the company up and created an opportunity for Garrett. And Garrett, the three of these guys worked together. I was really much on the sidelines of this, but I really believe in the divine as it relates to this company.
Yeah.
I can see it makes you emotional.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
But it's, maybe that's the power of sauna and
Of
your
good heat.
your journey.
Well, that's why I'm emotional. And many of those, I love the people and I love the product. It's
They're
given me
honest people. They produce about 600 heaters per year at the moment. So we're talking, they care about what they're doing and they're really passionate about it. No, that's a wonderful, wonderful story. So let's talk a little bit about travel. So you are, you're well sauna experienced. You've been out to Finland, the Baltic states, and we've met at the World Sauna Forums previously. Tell us a bit about your favorite international sauna experiences. A little bit about your 40 saunas in 40 days.
50 saunas.
50. Sorry, go on. And then also a little bit about your trip coming up as well.
Okay, happy to do so.
Yeah.
So my sauna life, was very focused on northern Minnesota, and I brought sauna to my backyard. The backyard health and wellness retreat. I built my first backyard sauna in the early 2000s because we're on an island and you can't get to it during the shoulder seasons of ice forming in the fall and ice thawing in the spring. And I'm like a sauna nut, so it just was so logical to build a sauna in my own backyard. And so that's the kind of life I lived for a while until sauna travel got back into the scope of things. So in 2019, I went to Finland, to the Mecca, and I figured I'd do a sauna a day. 12 days, 12 saunas, perfect. Well, I think I could double up if I can get, because it makes sense. I mean, I could do an afternoon sauna and a night sauna and knock a couple out. And I had no intention of doing 50 saunas in 12 days, but that's how it rolled. But, there is a cheat in this, and it has to do with, I was with Jarmo Lehtonen at the Finnish Sauna Society, and the next day we traveled to Tampere, and I'm keeping score, and I turned to Jarmo and I said, so Finnish Sauna Society on Tuesday, do I count that as one? And he goes, well, how many saunas were you in at the Finnish Sauna Society? And I said, I think I was in all of them. That's 6. Well, then your number is 6 because every sauna has its own soul.
Yeah.
I'm like, 6 Every sauna has its own soul.
Nice.
And that's stuck with me. So that's the cheat. If you want to do 50 saunas in 12 days, you go to a place that has multiple saunas.
And were they all on? Or
Oh, yeah. Okay. They were all on. And that place is, you've been, right?
Yeah.
That's actually a really cool thing. And given that your motto of when you feel good heat, it's all over, right? It's all about the heat at the core of it. And Finnish Sauna Society actually almost has like cut and paste saunas several times over, but the thing that's different is the temperature, how long they're fired for, right?
Yeah.
So what was your takeaway from the
I had an emotional experience in number 3, which they say is the hottest.
Yeah.
And I loved it, man, because, you know, the thing about, let's talk about that, like good sauna, heat, steam, ventilation, you know, chemoratio. I love that line, you know, as we explain what good sauna is, heat. But heat is not temperature alone. Like most people consider, what's the temp? That's the heat. No, it's just a baseline it's the beginning of explaining what, there's many components to good heat. And I can sit in a really hot sauna, you know, when the heat is good for a long time. And there I was sitting with Jarmo Lehtinen, and he goes, now we must go to the sea. And I'm like, you go, man. I'm sticking here. I'm sticking this out. And that's where I had an emotional moment because when, you know, you feel good heat, not only is it all over, but it knows no borders.
Yeah.
And the heat I felt in there is exactly what I know is good heat from 15, 18 years of creating it myself. And it just means so much to me that heat is like that. It can, when there's a pinnacle of good heat, and I felt it at the Finnish Sauna Society, the most austere place you can do it.
Yeah.
And it's in my backyard too.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So this trip, you're heading out not to Finland this time.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm off to Norway tomorrow.
Yeah.
On invitation from Mikkel Alland.
Yeah.
And I'll be with Lassi doing...
Lasse Eriksson from Faresbad.
From Faresbad. I'll be there tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. I love what he's up to, man. And I have a new... not new, but I have an appreciation for Aufguss and the whole vibe of what that is and how it contributes to good heat, steam, ventilation.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I got that going on, and then I'll be deep into the floating saunas of Norway for a few days, and then back to Minnesota.
The Badstu folk in the Oslo fjord, right?
Aren't they amazing what they're
really
doing?
great.
Should we talk about
Yeah,
them?
right.
I mean, we've got to get those
listeners?
guys on the podcast,
Yeah.
so you know, let's not steal their whole story.
no,
but
a shout out to Ragnar, who we met in the UK Sauna Summit,
Yes.
and in the same way that I mean, I don't know if you had it, but the kind of pinch yourself moment that I had at Hackney Wick, having not been there in ages, and seeing what like a acceleration and rapid growth and how well attended it was, both for the event that was there, but regular sauna goers and private bookings. It was like, whoa, this is really happening. And
Are we talking community sauna?
Yeah.
Let's tell listeners about that place. Should we?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that
Please.
it sounds like from what Ragnar was saying about her efforts in Oslo that, you know, is very similar kind of traction happening there.
well, even more so. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, when you look at the numbers there versus what we have in London. So London, it feels like sauna and community sauna is burgeoning and kind of really blowing up. But in Oslo, it's like an order of magnitude already there. You know.
So Hackney Wick. So Charlie has been a guest on Sauna Talk, and he's not the only one. That's a very free range organic establishment.
It is
Hackney Community Sauna, but it's cool. It's really got a artsy vibe, very creative space with multiple things happening, not just sauna.
And everyone's hands on. Charlie will be there after hours fixing, keeping on top of various maintenance things. But then the same guys that are there manning the shifts, you know, like
Are in the saunas.
we met Omar, and he led some amazing. So Omar's background is from Mexico, and he was, he's got into the world of Aufguss kind of on the periphery of it and going, hey, this is quite cool. I think I think I could add my own flair to that.
Sure.
So we were lucky enough to experience a few little sessions with him.
Really cool. And I like how there's like, they're not trying to, the vibe there isn't polished, right? Like there's ladders sitting around and, it's a real freeform art space to me. Like, and the sauna, it's very comfortable. It's my kind of space. I think some may be a little intimidated that are looking for more of a sterile, environment, like a health club type people and stuff. This is more of a bohemian sauna hangout space, musician-y, and I love that, man. I was very comfortable at community sauna.
It probably relates to the fact, like when we were discussing Sauna Talk at the start of this podcast, the sauna as a canvas for expression and ideas, and there was people there that aren't. They hadn't seen what the new resurgence in British bathing culture means and what that looks like. And the biggest takeaway for a lot of those people who are visiting from Europe and Finland, Norway, and the Nordics was the social energy in sauna that maybe not used to.
Yeah, a little bit. And then we're talking about Ragnar. So there's 19 saunas under that establishment.
Yeah, in Oslo.
In Oslo. I think 15 of them are floating. And 51 employees. I'm not going to steal her thunder for her visit to your podcast.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's got a bohemian thing. I'm sure it probably does. But what's nice about it's 10 quid or 10 USD equivalent or something like that. So it's very reasonable to go. And I asked her what percent of her of the attendance is local Norwegians versus, like tourists and stuff like that. And sure, it's more in summer, but they have a very much a regular crowd, and there's a long waiting list to get the punch pass. And so it's part of the tapestry of the community there, and it's affordable, and they have really great outreach programs in their community. And I think that parallels Hackney as well.
Well, and they had, with Ragnar was saying in her talk, they had the royals there as well, not just the Norwegian, but the Danish royal family went to visit. And I think, again, just really shows that it knows no boundaries, right? No borders, and there's no social divides there either. So really good to see that it's not also just a little bubble in the UK. This thing is happening internationally, and we talked when we were there, and it's been in the press recently in the UK, and we've spoken at length about this idea of the sense of community that is replacing the vacuum left by the emptying of the churches and the pubs and the village halls. And that was certainly, when you listen to a lot of the practitioners at the UK Sauna Summit and the people there, that was the vibe, that the energy that these people were bringing in. And speaking to some of the people there, and they're talking about head counts of hundreds of people a day, and on working days, hundreds of people a day coming through this. We're not just talking 4 or 5 guys that just happen to hang out in this one sauna trailer every now and then. We're talking, big operations and big throughput and big, returning customer base.
So one point to that is it is economically constructive to be doing that, like because stay with the truck and the diesel engine analogy, right? Like once or the airplane, you're a pilot, so right, like what percent of the fuel you use is to get off the ground? It's a massive amount of fuel. So once you get that sauna lit to temp
in cruising altitude,
how wonderful it is to share it. Share the heat with others.
Exactly right. Yeah, and I think that's probably the experiential analogy of using a sauna is something that I think we see in this space as well. This event is so open and so so much about giving, a bit like a potlatch in the States. Everybody brings and gives. And if everybody brings and gives, then you just end up with this beautiful, altruistic, collaborative space.
Yeah.
And what was really good was to see, this wasn't just a load of people who were, were just starting out in this space, or a load of people who were just lifestyle businesses. There were people there for sure that were lifestyle businesses and lifestyle practitioners. There were also people there with larger, still small businesses, but people like ourselves who are making jobs for people, and, companies with 15 to 30 staff. And then you had people like the Therme Group guys were there, and we had people from bigger international companies, not just sponsoring, but David Ahonen, the international sales director for Harvia Group, who are a publicly traded on the Helsinki Stock Exchange company. You had people from all kinds of commercial entities across Europe there to kind of come and have a look and see what was going on. And the really refreshing thing was certainly, it was certainly clear from a lot of those guys. You're speaking to the Therme guys, or speaking to the guys. There were the people from investment groups and things like that who were like, "Wow, this is really cool. This is really cool because it's nice, because of the vibe." And I think, because of the way where it's come from, I feel like the transmission of the culture has become a really important thing. And just listening to the Therme Group guys talking about the importance of community engagement for that space, and not it just becoming an elite, secluded, just another spa complex, right? That's not what they want, and that's not how they see themselves in this space. And they want to kind of collaborate, and they want to be involved. And they sat, they didn't just come in and hand out business cards and get out of there. They were, like ourselves, some of the last people there at the end of the day. So,
and they were really attentive. I saw the guys listening through every panel discussion and every talk. And actually that goes, that's representative of the entire event. I don't think I've been at a more respectful event in such a long time, where people weren't really going off outside to chat whilst the discussions were going on. Barry Sykes from British Sauna Society was emceeing and corralling folks to the seats, trying to stick to the time
people
schedule.
wanted to come back and sit down
and silently, because we there was a few points, little technical issues with the microphone, so people sometimes had to project their voice. And people were so quiet and attentive, and it was really refreshing. It
was
to
a
see.
good vibe. And we know how to party too.
Yeah.
So and it goes on into the evening, and they fired up the saunas. And
as soon as formalities were done with the drinks started flowing, saunas were hot.
Rob de Bank, the DJ, he's a big proponent in this space as well. And him and Nick from the British Sauna Society were there DJing and playing music. So just so good to see it all coming
great
together.
Music too.
Yeah.
Not in your face music, like good heat. It's there behind you.
Yeah. Just adding to the space.
It fosters the feeling. It's not commanding the stage.
Should we talk a little bit about? I got one.
Go on.
The Holy Trinity.
In terms of sauna construction,
you want? Well, you guys lead, man. This is your show. Go ahead. What do you want to talk about?
This is, as we said, this is conversational. So
because you've got a few trinities in what you do. So in the original one in sauna construction is like the Illuminati. The sauna Illuminati symbol. We can talk about that, or are you referring to a different kind of Holy Trinity?
Well, ask me anything. Maybe. Go, you guys lead.
Well, what do you mean by Holy Trinity?
Come on.
All right. So
Dish.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make this understandable for those not in the space.
Yeah.
Sometimes we can get really, I call it pedantic chatter, which I really try to avoid. I despise it, quite frankly. I find it a trap. I think it would be a great post is maybe we do this is top 10 pedantic chatter and how to avoid it, you know, or whatever. And, you know, because I see this all the time. So like you're trying to make a point, and then you talk about convective loop. Oh, he must know what he's talking about. Stratification, thermal bridging. You know, like we could come up with about 10 of these. You got
These
one?
are all buzzwords that I'm
me
guilty of using, though.
Well, that's okay. Give me a buzzword. What one comes to mind?
I mean, we use isotherm or I'm trying to think.
Well, I love how you guys say olivine diabase.
Olivine diabase.
Yeah, I mean, you're a rock expert, aren't you?
I like the geology.
Yeah,
So you're referring specifically to the jargon then, the words that might be a bit exclusive.
Jargon busting.
Yeah, jargon busting.
With Max and Jake, the Sauna Twins. Because, I mean, we walk a fine line there. I mean, we want to have a word to explain things.
Yeah.
But we also
don't want to be too exclusive.
Yeah, right? yeah. And so when it comes to explaining sauna, right, like to me, you know, it's this holy trinity of heat, steam, ventilation.
Yeah.
And then which one do you want to talk about? Pick one.
Well, we've spoken briefly about heat, which is, you know, when you felt good heat, it's all over.
Sure. And temperature is only one measure thereof.
Yeah.
Lampamassa I'd like to get a Lampamassa meter. Wouldn't that be a cool thing? How we could measure thermal heat in a room.
But I mean, you can.
Okay.
You can. It's interferometer. You measure infrared emission from a surface. What you would, I guess, be interested in is how is it Gauss is the quantity of infrared from a specific area.
Yeah, exact. Yeah, I like that.
And we were talking yesterday. You, Kirill from Tulekivi, and ourselves about this soapstone and the kind of the density of it and the thermal capacity of it and what that means for the Lampamassa.
Yeah, man. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different materials even have an influence.
Cool. Right. So all right, let's do another one. So we can go off on
So
heat.
before we go, you know, just to bust some jargon whilst you guys are just throwing it all out there. So Lampamassa, you know, is thermal mass, right? The idea that the more dense something is, the more heat that it can kind of hold and re-radiate. And then different materials have a different speed at which they re-radiate. So the best example of this, or best analogy for listeners trying to get their head around that idea, is like if you put the same amount of heat into metal as you do into stone, the metal will get very, very hot very fast, and they'll get very, very cool very fast. Whereas the stone will take a lot longer to heat up, but then it will re-radiate that heat a lot slower.
Well, there's another element to that, which is specific heat capacity.
Yes.
So different materials have different abilities. So it's not just density.
Correct.
Density has a profound effect. And given that, you know, if you picture a sauna, the majority material is wood. So given that wood doesn't really change its molecular structure between species, you can attribute density to meaning thermal capacity.
Yeah.
But,
and I like this thing about multi-directional radiant heat.
Yeah.
That is like a cool jargon term.
What does that mean, Glenn?
That means you feel it all over. And that's I
You're
think
being heated by the wooden panels because they're hot. You're being heated by the benches. You're being heated by you know the ceiling and the heater, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it means?
Totally. It's all over.
It's all over.
And that's enveloping heat. And I think
heat.
That's something that we can feel. Maybe we can quantify it with this device. But if we want to get heat, like what does it mean? And then we can explain this at a cocktail party to a non-sauna enthusiast in kind of practical ways.
Nobody wants cold feet.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants cold feet.
Let's talk about number 3, ventilation then, right? And so now I'm hot and cold on ventilation as a subject matter, but to me it's well, let's not go into it unless you really want to, because Max, you presented about electrical ventilation at the summit, and it was great.
Well, the thing is, right, my take on ventilation is I'm not as butthurt as I probably project on the topic, because it has different implications which you can harvest experientially. So there's there's pros and cons. For example, the whole practice of Aufguss can probably be attributed to the fact that they don't ventilate saunas apart from between rounds.
So they do, yeah. So they ventilate when the doors are open, and they also do. A number of Aufguss saunas that I've been into do have a ventilation system, but what they don't have is a ventilation system that is set up for lots of people go in together and lots of people go out, and so the unique issues that you have in Aufguss is that it's not an organic movement of people over the course of an hour. It's a congress of people in a short space of time.
Yeah, but actually some of those large event saunas we're familiar with, they don't have ventilation in the traditional sense that we're familiar with. They don't have holes in the wall, ducting, fans, or whatever. And actually the Aufguss meister's job is to fan the fresh air in, and then they're moving the air around with the towels and the fans. And that gives rise to the experience.
I think that's interesting, and I wrote about this on SaunaTimes. I created a character, a German character, who is sitting in, the German sitting on a bench at a community center sauna with really shitty ventilation. And one guy says, enough, and he gets up and starts spinning the towel, and Aufguss is born.
But I was sat on the bottom bench and the top bench in the event sauna at community sauna baths at Hackney Wick, and you do feel the loyly in both positions when the Aufguss Meister is moving the
as opposed to just the top bench.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you ventilate a space properly, and this is, ventilation is one of those where, in a brass tacks way to look at it is, ventilation for wood burning is predominantly passive, and that's multifaceted. That's to do with the fact that typically wood burning heaters output a lot more kilowatts of energy, so you've got a lot more push from the buoyancy of the air. So you can get it to ventilate itself, and you get that almost siphon effect once there's enough higher, warmer pressure in the space to pull itself out. But electric heaters typically need a helping hand.
Bingo.
Especially in the context of more modern wood-burning sauna heaters that have a continuous burn, because the flue gases, the combustion's drawing in oxygen and the flue gas is going up the flue itself. That's drawing in, like the siphon effect Jake was talking about.
Yeah, right.
And if you create pressure differentials using extraction fans in wood-burning setups, you could, in theory, lead to downdrafts, which could lead to things like carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah,
so
not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Yeah, you're trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
With wood burning. But electric, this is what I like.
So electric needs that helping hand.
Yeah, I like this.
Much more prone to stratification, typically speaking. And
so stratification, jargon busting, that's where the heat
separates itself
in strata,
in
layers across the room. So you get...
I wish I had my notepad. Jargon busting with Max Newport.
So
that's the name of the post on SaunaTimes.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want to write it down, but we're going to not forget.
Just listen back to the podcast, or you can listen to this on the plane on the flight back.
Okay. This electric business with ventilation, I really appreciate your presentation on it, and I think this is going to be the next wave, because you look at in America. Okay, so I think it's about 90% electric, 10% wood burning. There's a lot of places in the United States where they're banning the burning of wood, which is
same
a whole
in the UK.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So we got to win this electric sauna battle, and I think, again, back to the Holy Trinity, ventilation is such a key thing.
Well, let me give you an analogy on that, right? So we love talking through analogies here, and I think it helps the listeners, kind of put a bit into perspective as well. I have a friend who they discovered an old World War II bunker on their property, and we've helped, and I guess, teens of projects that have bunkers in, some that we've built, some that we've provided equipment and materials for. And the issue that most bunker conversions, so we're talking bomb shelters basically, face is they're reinforced concrete, and they have very limiting ventilation. So For anybody who doesn't know, reinforced concrete, it's got steel rebar in it. And if you drill a hole anywhere, you're going to hit metal. It's almost impossible to drill a hole through reinforced concrete. So this friend of mine, he with our assistance, he converted this bunker into a sauna, and he has not only he has all kinds of. He's a PhD chemist, right? So he's nerds out about this sort of stuff as well. But he has sensors in the space, not only looking at temperature but O2 levels. And whenever he has a big gathering and people decide, okay, we're all going to go to sauna together, and you could probably squeeze 20 people in his sauna in this bomb shelter. You've got to keep an eye on the O2 meter, and he sets a threshold alarm at, I think it's about 19% is his alarm goes off. Atmospheric is 21 to 22%, right? 19 and below is when it starts hitting the danger zone. And when you have 20 people in there all respiring together in one sauna session, suddenly within one sauna session towards the end of it, the thing that gets everybody to go out is the little O2 meter starts beeping. And you think about these commercial saunas, and this is something obviously Max talked about in his talk, and something that was one of the motivating factors for us to really look properly at this space and really understand what was going wrong, is that historically a lot of hotels, gyms and spas in the UK have these hot, dry boxes, no ventilation, loads of people coming in and going. And I still find people I speak to, they go, oh, I feel like I can't breathe when I'm in the sauna.
Totally.
You feel like you
literally can't.
You feel like you can't breathe because there's not enough oxygen in there. There's not enough air moving around in there. And you're not trying to just trap a load of hot air. This isn't a hot air balloon. You're
a quick wedge on that one is you can understand why, because the people building saunas, commercial saunas, were contractors, and their whole thing is like, oh, you want a room that's 100 degrees Celsius? Well, we're going to insulate the shit out of that.
Let's not let any air escape.
That's how they're wired to do it.
Yeah, and you see people, like I've been out to old commercial saunas that did have a gap under the door, and then I'm like, oh, you've put like a plastic plate along the bottom of the door, and the facilities manager is like, "Oh yeah, it was letting all the cool air in." Yeah. And you're like, "Well, yeah," and it wouldn't be so pronounced if you had a proper ventilation strategy and it was managed properly. So yeah, I mean, electric is one where there are. To pardon the analogy, there's more than one way to skin the cat, so to speak.
Yeah.
And we've seen old research going back even to the 70s with the advent of electric sauna heaters, which originally I think was done by Helo, looking at using smoke bombs and sucking from here and blowing from there, and bringing fresh in here and exhausting hot air out there. And there's a lot of different ways you can do this.
Malcolm Reese contacted me. He's an American guy, 45-year engineer in the space, who got a sauna. His wife passed away. He's 81 years old now. He nerded out on that Finnish study you're talking about. And so I posted all his shenanigans on SaunaTimes. And if anyone wants to nerd out on ventilation as it relates to electric sauna heat, I call it the AB. You can just go to SaunaTimes and search ventilation and find what you're talking about. The original study, as well as his analyses and empirical efforts to, really dissect that. But I call it the ABCD, with 4 vents. Well, we don't want to get into it, do we? Where they're all located. I think it's going to be a total digression.
We're trying to bring it into the modern age, so we're kind of looking at it from a fluid dynamics modeling perspective and using modern, because you can model all of these things now in CAD and you can play around with them. And one of the challenges that our projects team face is every space is different. So no two sauna spaces are the same here in the UK, especially with very old housing stock and really quirky spaces. And so we're constantly like playing around with understanding what happens to the heat and steam in the space.
I have a product suggestion for us, and we could brand it SaunaTimes, but for every electric sauna that you deliver to a client, we give them like a $20 Spotify gift card for a playlist with some Grateful Dead or whatever, and then a stick of incense, because I love this trick.
Yeah.
And I think it's very empowering that the homeowner or the sauna owner gets to know their own air movement of their sauna.
Yeah.
And there's, you talk about the smoke bomb thing, but when you light a stick of, I used to do it with a cigarette lighter just to see which vent is coming and going with the air and stuff. A quick one on that is a buddy of mine built a horse trailer sauna, and we're sitting on the bench, and he had never opened the
dump vent,
the window, actually the window in the sauna, in the horse trailer, and I'm like, man, I can tell this needs more ventilation. So he just cracked it, and then we had the cigarette lighter, and it was drawing air in at the top, and then it was pulling air out. It was like this perfect ventilation thing just by opening that window, the existing window in the horse trailer a little bit. So there's a couple of techniques for those watching, listening to really understand the breadth of your sauna. And I would offer the Finnmark SaunaTimes kit, which would include some incense.
Yeah,
incense.
We like to use tissue paper. That's quite good because you can get a real feel for where it's blowing as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can use state-of-the-art CAD models and things, but we believe it's fundamentally it's quite hands-on rudimentary testing like that. You can it can be so much more educational because you're in the space, you can feel it, you can see it moving,
and then you identify it, because I think ventilation is so misunderstood or under-recognized. And then if you have your client understanding it. And I love, do every one of your vents have chutes or sliders to them?
Yeah, we use
valves.
Typically about rotational ducting.
Yeah.
So you rotate to close and open.
And that gives you infinite control.
Yeah.
And so why not empower the clients?
And that's the thing, it doesn't happen that often anymore, and it is getting more and more in the mindset of people. But certainly in the early days, we had clients who whose only experience of saunas was through commercial facilities that have been on all day, every day, and they go in there, and even the floor tiles are hot. And then they wonder, why a domestic sauna isn't an isotherm. So there's that jargon again, an isotherm. And that's, the idea that if this, and when we talk about this, maybe it's unfair because you can understand why people make this mistake. But the idea that if you set your heater to 90 Celsius, why is the whole sauna when up to temperature not all 90 Celsius? And the reality is it never ever will be. That's never going to happen. And there's going to be hot spots and cold spots, and they're not going to be they're not always going to be where you think they're going to be. And actually sometimes you see this like irrational or this kind of unusual thing happen in saunas, which if you've never seen this before, to us of course it's old hat, but like if you go and sit really close to the heater, it's not the hottest spot.
I know.
The hottest spot is diagonally opposite because of the way the convection goes.
That's where I try to go.
It's really funny.
I'm drawn to that spot. And what's the principle of that? Heat wants to go to cold, right?
Well,
is it drawing
convection current?
Yeah, it's convection. So the hot air rises, spreads out across the ceiling to the extent of the ceiling, and then it's always being replaced by more hot rising air. So some of that air hasn't yet cooled necessarily so much, so that starts descending and gets pushed down. But the main airflow is always going to be as it spreads out, kind of diagonally opposite along the longest kind of section, the hypotenuse of the room.
I love that. Yeah, that's a cool principle. Counterintuitive to your point.
Well, it is. We get clients that, I catch up with them after 6 months or something, just drop in, check everything's still okay. And they say, yeah, I always sit here because it's the hottest and I love the heat, but my wife sits over there. I'm like, well, actually, your wife's the hardcore.
She's the one sat in the heat and the steam.
That's great. Yeah. I think stratification's a good thing, and it's okay to be a low bench Larry.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing, is that actually
different people want different things.
If you think about
multifunctional.
If you think about like the Finnish Sauna Society where you went, the bathing bench, there's only one bathing bench. It's not like there's tiers. You have the raised floor and you walk up the steps to the bathing bench. So you have to have different saunas for different bathing temperatures. But actually, for some people where you have different preferences and you can't have multiple saunas, and you still want to go as like a big social group rather than that kind of Finnish tradition of women and children first, and then men once it's up really scorching hot, then having tiered benches and actually playing into the stratification works.
Yeah, and a residential, it's not always easy to do that. Like I talk about the law of Loyly versus what I call the bleacher effect. And I think if you have a small footprint, it's difficult to get multi-layer benches happening in a small footprint. So, but what I like also is that kids can sit on I like this triple bench system where the third bench is a step stool, and then, it's just perfect length, like maybe 12 inches from floor to that third bench, or and that's great. A kid can sit right there perfectly with that distance and his little legs.
Yeah, so for listeners to clarify, so you have your upper bench, your lower bench, and then a movable step, essentially, which is something we feature a lot in our designs.
Yeah.
That movable step is exactly that. But I've seen commercial saunas in Finland where they literally have a baby in the bucket. When I say a baby, I mean like a 6-month-old baby sat in a bucket and they're just pouring cold water over their head.
That was Nate.
And
he was about 6 weeks old when we had him in the bucket.
Wow.
And he loved it.
Yeah.
That's like yesterday. I remember that, and he's 24 now.
Great. And what do your kids think of your passion for this? Because obviously, is this just Dad, this is so weird, like, or are they big sauna fans?
So with Nate, it's gone full circle from 6 weeks old, sitting in the little dish bucket, splashing around, looking at his older brother and other kids along the island path. He grew up with that, for first 10 years of his life, really, all summer, every summer. So sauna is in his DNA, much like a Finn, in that sense. His older brother, Grant, same story. Grant was about 4 or 5 when he first took regular saunas. And that's, I'm very proud to say at my cabin, I still have never used the shower in our cabin. Yeah. And that's what we would do. In a rainy day, we're going to go sauna. And the kids would come down, there's a series of about 20 cabins on the western edge of this large island there are other kids and stuff. And there's this rainy day, like kind of today here that we're experiencing, this straight rain, and it's not going to end. It's just going to be a rainy day. Well, what a great way to turn a rainy day into a party day. And so the kids would hear our kids splashing and laughing and jumping off the dock, and then they would kind of gather on a rainy day. So I know those memories are formidable for both Grant and Nate. Grant's more of he's not into thermal regulation like the three of us, and all of us listening probably. He's like tropical fish with his climate. He lives in Dallas, and he likes the air conditioner, and he likes things at 68, and he loves Dallas because Minnesota's too cold for him. So that's him. But Nate comes over to sauna. He lives in Minneapolis as well, and he grooves on it. So I don't know what they think of me, but I can say my wife Julia, we call it the S word at home because she's very cool about all this. Let me mind you, but she's not like Lisa, your wife, who's in the business and stuff. Julia's on the periphery to it, and
but she enjoys a sauna as well. Will she sit with you?
Hey, if anyone listening knows about headaches, contact me, because this is a goal of mine. Is she gets headaches really easily, and so she is a bit delicate. She's very delicate, so she doesn't sauna.
Yeah. Okay. Salts. That's always the secret to...
Let's talk hydration.
Yeah.
I think hydration is going to be a big deal, like not just in this space, but my contention on this is if you go into a convenience store, is that what you call them here? Corner shop?
Corner shop.
Yeah. If you go into a convenience store in America, I mean, like there is a full couple doors of energy my feeling on this is that we lose energy because we're dehydrated, for other reasons and stuff. So they're trying to, with these energy drinks, we're treating a symptom, not a cause.
Yeah.
And I think when people get more in tune to hydration and what it means for their body, I think it's going to be natural energy for them.
Yeah.
And I think bottled water is a crock. I mean, what they're doing, and I know this. I mean, I worked for Nestle for 20 years, and I wasn't in the water division. But the whole idea, if you're Coke, Pepsi, Nestle, and you're bottling water, is you want to make that thing as pure as possible. And so by nature of doing that, you're pulling all the minerals out. And so I see people drinking bottled water, and I feel bad for them. I think it's a dehydrating.
But if you go to Europe, you'll be able to reel off a few examples. But the mineral water,
Vaska in Finland, Vitautas in Lithuania and Estonia. There's the famous German one as well. That'll come.
Oh, the glass bottle one, the Gersteiner.
It's it'll come to me.
It begins with a G.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, I love that stuff because that's from the earth, right?
And it tastes salty.
Yeah,
and actually, it's interesting the conversations that we had at UK Sauna Summit. I was listening to Deborah Carr and Liz Watson talking about UK Alfgus at Galgorm, and this was, I think, Liz's first kind of diving head first into the repeat, session after session after session. And I think she was aware of people using like these rehydration sachets and trying to keep on top of salts.
Yeah, they're like the performance-enhancing drugs of the performance sauna world.
Ooh, I like
that. But shouldn't be frowned upon is rehydration sachets.
Yeah, she got to such a position. She was explaining that she ended up at the doctor's or hospital because she was so dehydrated when she'd returned. Because
and I was there giving her, shout out to Liz. I have my dressing gown at these events is always stuffed full of the, I go for the own brand rehydration sachets because there are some big name ones like Diorolite where you'll get, for £8 you'll get 5 sachets, and what's in there is like potassium salts, sodium salts, magnesium salts, right?
Yes.
They absolutely shouldn't cost like £8 for 5 sachets.
Right.
But there are a lot of own brand ones, so, ones that you'll find in a supermarket that don't have any specific brand, and they're far more reasonably priced. So my pockets are like brimming with these. And,
it's like a dealer.
And I come out and I'm like, hey, do you want some salts? And they're like, oh, should, and I found at the finals of the of the World Alfgus Championships at Satama last year, had it a bit at Farisbad, the playoffs. But at Satama, we were going to sauna every single day, at least 5 times per day, for a whole week for full performance Alfgus sessions, which are, brushing on half an hour between when you walk in the door and walk out the door. And I was drinking loads of water. I was hitting the rehydration sachets as much as I could, and I was still getting really bad cramps. And we were cycling to and from our accommodation as well. And I'd get home and I could feel my fingers all kind of clawing up. And so it's because I think the body doesn't rehydrate and remineralize as quickly as perhaps we think. I'm a bit dehydrated. I'll have some water and I'll have some salts, but your body doesn't absorb all of that, and it takes a lot longer to regain what is lost.
No question.
And then picture the jury who have to spend a huge amount of time on the benches.
Wow.
And so for them, it's the rehydration strategy is really
key.
important.
Yeah.
And their safety, they're always monitoring. Like, you feel okay, and they're actually reducing the allotted. So I think it used to be 15 minutes performance. And as Jake says, you've got to herd, 200, 300 people into an event sauna. So there can be a lot of time either side of that.
Where you're waiting for it.
Somebody stands up, please be quiet. We're going to have and they do an introduction. And
they're looking at reducing it from 15 minutes to 13 minutes or 14 minutes. I can't remember. They're 1 or 2 minutes, but across the course of a whole day,
it would be great to do some blood testing on the judges, particularly there. And even, I was there pouring it in the water and drinking it. And I remember talking to Lasse and some of the other judges and saying, I'm knocking back water in these rehydration sachets. And they're like, they're like, when it gets bad, we're just pouring it straight under the tongue.
Yeah.
Right into their mouth because it's just, it gets that bad. So, yeah, look, I know we could talk for hours, and I'll I'll let you have one more, and then I'll round us off.
I'm going to do a shout out to the Slavics and stuff in America. We're like you guys. We were a melting pot and stuff, and so this whole banya side of sauna, if you could call it that, is really awesome. This ancient practices and the whisking and the Venic treatments and stuff. And I think it's really kind of cool, this Ofkos parallel to Venic and the compare contrast element to it. But Dan and Anya from the Banya House in Minneapolis, Anya is a nutritionist, and they're very into natural hydration through herbs and stuff. So the teas, the Russian teas, very saddled very closely to the banya experience for hydration. So
those guys are lovely. They took me for a banya whilst I was in Minneapolis and gave me some of those loose leaf teas as well.
Yeah,
and just fantastic.
Yeah. So, did we cover the world's problems here?
I think we did a good job. So I mean, and I feel the lovely listeners. I think
congratulations if you
made it this far.
Through.
Then you're a real sauna enthusiast. So to sum it all off, thanks for coming on to the podcast, Glenn. This has been a real honor. Quick shout out again. So the website, if you don't know, saunatimes.com. All kinds of information on there. Glenn offers support for people who want to build their own saunas and sit down paid for consultations on that, which is great. And if you have any questions about sauna at all, then Glenn is a fantastic fountain of information and social connector and networker. There's not many people who don't know and love Glenn in this space. And anything else you want to shout out that's coming up that people should look out for? You've got the book potential.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it gets kicked to the curb all the time, but I am working on the print edition of my book with better drawings and easier to understand. So that's coming.
What's the hopeful, speculative?
Couple weeks.
Couple of weeks.
No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
it's you need a deadline, right?
Yeah.
But I don't have one, so shame on me. But now the day I get home from this Euro trip, I think the plane lands at 2 p.m. or something on Wednesday. By 2 p.m. Thursday, I'll be at my cabin, and that's where shit happens. I get up there on the island and I become really present, and that's where I'm going to dedicate more time to attack the print edition. I could say it's done, but I'm really focusing a lot of attention of integrating drawings.
Yeah.
Kyle Fredrickson came to me, and he is a great SketchUp artist, and he's a sauna enthusiast. And in the good karma of sauna, he came to me, and then I'm helping him with his sauna project, and he's helping me in a huge way. So he's my motivator.
Nice.
So that's coming, and just stay tuned because I like to be fluid.
Yeah. So by this time next year, do you think it will?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So watch this space, guys. By this time next year, no later, Glenn's book will be out in the world, and we'll get you back on here to really go into the nitty gritty of the mechanics and do
maybe
a bit more.
Bust a few more jargon.
Words. A bit more jargon.
I am kind of afraid of the print edition because you're really making
putting a line in the sand.
Yeah.
Well, you've got to make sure that the last page says this is relevant and accurate to the date of publication. However, this is an organic culture,
That's
always
so
evolving.
Brother. He's so good at that kind of stuff. You're going to help me with that lingo.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one quick example of that, where when it's in digital form, you get a get out of jail free card. Is when I started building saunas, it was foil bubble wrap, and that I thought was God's gift to the world because you could push your cart down the Home Depot aisle and put it. You can get that. And I've built many saunas with foil bubble wrap, and do I get the wrath for that? But I did check the service temp rating, and it is good to 180 Fahrenheit or 200 or whatever. But there's a better product today, and we can talk about that on the next show and stuff. But that's the fluidity that I have with the digital version.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, guys.
So thanks so much again for coming on.
Cheers.
Thanks.
This was a lot of fun.
Always.
Until next time.
Right on.